Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to talk about a problem with modern cars that have engines that burn oil. And I'm doing this because lately some of my customers have told me that they have a car engine and it's burning oil. On a car that's new, a year old, 2 years old, they change the oil all the time, but they go to the dealer and they say, why is my car burning a quart of oil every 1,000 miles or less? To be told by the dealership, oh, that's normal for that car. Well, it may be their definition of normalcy, but it's not right. And I'm going to show you the history of car engines to explain why it's not right. Now, here's a cool model of a 4-stroke engine. On the intake stroke, the piston goes down, the intake valve opens, air and fuel mixture goes inside the cylinder. Then on the compression stroke, the valve closes, the mixture is compressed, and at the top, the spark plug just fires. Then it pushes down the compression to give you power. And then the last stroke, the exhaust stroke, it pushes up, the exhaust valve opens, and the spent fuel goes out the exhaust. It's called a 4-stroke motor because it has 4 strokes. It has intake, it has compression, it has power, and it has exhaust. So every time the engine fires, there's 4 parts to that firing. Now, a 2-stroke engine only has 2 strokes. They pollute a lot more. It's a total loss oil system. You have to mix the oil with the gas and it just burns it out to lubricate it. They pollute so much that in most cases they're illegal. They do have some more modern versions that work better, but for all intents and purposes, the engines we're driving are 4-stroke motors. And being 4-stroke motors, they should not burn oil at all. If they do, there's a problem, and here's where the problems are. The oil control ring on the piston keeps the oil from the crank from getting by the piston and burning inside. If these oil control rings are bad, or if the inside of the cylinder itself is worn, it will burn oil. And a classic example of this was the old Chevy Vega. The engineers came up with this idea to have an aluminum block engine. Aluminum is a lot softer than iron, but it weighs less. But they coated it with Teflon, and they thought, well, that'll keep the aluminum from wearing and it won't burn oil. But guess what? That Teflon coating wore off real fast. I had a friend with a Chevy Vega back in the 70s. Heck, he was burning a quart of oil every 60 miles in that stupid thing. So if the oil control ring is worn or the cylinder is worn, you're going to burn oil. Here's a piston I took out of an old motorcycle engine. It didn't burn any oil. As you can see, the oil control ring, hey, they're chrome plated, they're really well built. If you build them right, they won't burn oil. And the other way they can burn oil is the intake valves suck the fuel and air in. Well, they'll also suck in oil if the seals on the valves here are bad. The oil gets sucked from the top of the engine by the seal and be sucked inside and then burned. Now, my grandfather, who was also a mechanic, he was born in the late 1800s, and the early cars, they didn't even have valve seals in them. They just sucked oil in and burnt like mad. It was expected that they burnt oil, and every winter you'd have to take the engine apart, you'd have to clean off all the carbon from the burned oil and rebuild the engine. But modern cars should not be that way. Here's my 25-year-old Celica. It's got 240,000 miles. It still doesn't burn any oil. Here's my wife's 17-year-old Lexus. It doesn't burn any oil. And here's her previous car, an 11-year-old Matrix. It doesn't burn oil either. But there are quite a few modern cars that are now burning oil that shouldn't. As an example, the 2010 to 2017 Chevy Equinox with the 2.4-liter 4-cylinder engine, many of them burn more than a quart every 1,000 miles. And there's a class action suit against that one. Again, the dealership may tell you, oh, that's normal for those cars, and maybe normal for that car, but it's wrong. You don't want to buy a car like that. Because if you change your oil and filter regularly like you're supposed to, and use the oil they ask, in this case it's a 5W30 oil, your engine should not burn oil. As the engine fires, the oil should remain in the crankcase. It shouldn't get inside the cylinder and burn. That's just bad engineering or bad manufacturing processes. And with many cars these days going to GDI, gasoline direct injection, and turbocharging, there's higher and higher pressures inside the engine, higher pressures inside the fuel injection systems, so quality control and engineering has to be top-notch, or you'll end up with an engine that burns oil. And let's face it, nobody wants to buy a car and then get in a class action suit. What a hassle. So, we still live in a free society. You can vote with your money. Nobody's holding a gun to your head and says you got to buy this particular car. Do a little research online. You find out one manufacturer has problems with engines burning oil? Don't buy that manufacturer's car. It's that simple. Don't listen to any nonsense that they might tell you that, oh, it's normal for these engines to burn oil. Because as the old joke goes, what's the difference between a lawyer and a liar? Hey, just a couple of letters. And what's the difference between a salesman and a liar? Nothing. They're exactly the same. And for you, there's nothing worse than putting out your hard-earned money to buy an expensive new car only to find that in a short period of time, the thing's burning oil. And from this perspective, do what I always do. Never, ever buy a brand new engine design that just came out. No one knows what the history is. Like with that old Vega, people thought, oh great, an aluminum block, we'll put Teflon in it. Only to find that a few thousand miles later, the engines are burning all like mad because the Teflon all came off. So before you buy another car, do some serious research. And heck, you can always ask me online. I'll tell you which ones burn oil, which ones don't. Because we may live in a complex society, but when it comes to four-stroke gasoline engine, one thing is simple. They should not burn engine oil. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.